Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 3 of More Than a Title. I'm your host, Jared Thomas. Appreciate everybody for all the support and all the love. And as you guys know, we wanted to create this podcast so we could just basically learn more about the person behind the title, because I think there's so many of the same podcasts out there. We talk about marketing tips, we talk about what we do, but there's so many lessons in the personal journey. And today we have a special guest. This is one of my favorite people in Hootsuite. I'm gonna let y'all know right now, like, Maggie is the truth, y'all. So I've been in a lot of different big organizations, and to have somebody that's like open, that talks to us, that's just, just a great spirit. And Maggie, it's just a pleasure. So let's introduce special guest, CMO of Hootsuite, Maggie Lower. How are you?
Thank you. Well, I'm honored to be here. You've had some amazing guests, so I hope I can measure up, Jared. I'm honored to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. No, I know you are. They're going to love you like we do. So that's it. So, thank you for joining. And I'll start it off with the first time that we met, right?
Yeah.
So first time we met, we were doing a conference. It was a big global organization meeting, right? And we're talking about the plans for 2022. And immediately, as soon as the CMO, soon Maggie came in, I leaned in a little closer. So I want to know, because usually those meetings, let's be honest, sometimes they're fluffy. Sometimes it's like, what are we doing? It's hard to figure out what the long range plans are. And I got everything immediately. And the way you spoke to the team was just like, look, this is my vision. It was so crystal clear. And it's a lot of the principles that I think are encompass a great marketing team. And then I text you immediately on LinkedIn. I don't know what made me do it, but I'm like, Maggie, you are the best. I can't wait to see what's up. And then we just hit it off from there. And you've been just a big supporter of mine on my LinkedIn journey. And so I'm incredibly grateful. So hope that's the table for everybody. But let's start with your journey, Maggie. Let's start from the beginning of your career. Take us from the beginning. Like, how did you get into marketing, and where did you find your passion for it?
So very non-traditional path, right? So I started in my career, I got out of college with a history degree. I was like, maybe I'll be a lawyer. I don't know. Maybe I'll pursue academia. I did some work as an undergrad at the National Archives. And then, none of those things kind of stuck. And so I had an opportunity to work with Bank of America. So in that time, I worked with some amazing people. And I would say a hallmark of my time there was I had phenomenal sponsors. So more than mentors, more than people that were just doling out advice. These are people that were willing to kind of break down walls for me and, reach their hand back as they were going through their next door and bring me with them and train me, because I did not know what I was doing. I had a wonderful history degree, right? I could communicate, but you asked me how to navigate a P&L at 23, I would have looked at you terrified. So I had people teach me a lot. I was really, really fortunate. The reason I share that is that I spent that first 13 years of my career really on the P&L side, like really working. I managed relationship teams. At one point, I managed an exchange desk. So we were trading short-term cash, worked in really technical roles and then also strategy roles. But by the end, I was really acting as like the number 2 to managing directors and P&L leaders. And so I got to look at everything. And what I loved about that was no 2 days were the same. But what I started to really drift to was marketing. And as I got really passionate about marketing, I thought, who's going to give me a marketing job? I don't have a degree. So I was fortunate. The bank sponsored me to get my executive MBA, and it kind of took off from there. And somebody really took a chance on me and said, listen, I'm going to go do this big transformation project. That's really what if you were to talk to somebody about my time at Bank of America, it would be corporate athlete and change agent. They would drop me into some really thorny stuff. And they're like, can you just fix it? And I'm like, yes, like when you're dropping people into the forest in a fire, I would just kind of parachute in. They're like, just fix it. I don't really know how, just fix it. So,
oh man.
And I like that. I kind of like that. I like having to figure it out on my own, but knowing there's somebody that, if I need to ask questions to, I can go after it. But once I had that opportunity to be a CMO with Ann Hewitt, I was hooked. I mean, I absolutely loved it. It was more than anything that I, got out of the courses in my MBA program, which was phenomenal. I mean, I learned as much from the other students in that program as from the professors, because it's just such a wonderful program. But what I loved was like the art and science of marketing. I'm like, this is going to bring together the first 10 years of my career, and I'm going to go learn all the other stuff that I wasn't exposed to. And marketing's just always changing. Like anybody that says they're a marketing expert has not read anything today. Like marketing is going to change by the end of this podcast, and you and I both know it, right?
Yeah, for sure.
To really be successful at marketing, you got to come from a place of curiosity and humility. If you're not always learning, then you're going to get left behind, right? Like you can be an expert in an area of marketing, but to say you're a marketing expert, I think those are some pretty big claims. I think that's the profession fun, right? There's so much
exactly. That's like you said, the beauty of it, right? It changes constantly. You have to be, and it takes a lot of creativity, right? I hate when marketers or just people in general feel like marketing has to be a specific way, or it has to be done a certain way. Like, I think it was a cool line that Udi said on the first episode. He was like, I was like, how did you come up with your strategy? He said, I walked into the CEO's office and it said a big sign, population 8,000, who cares?
Right.
Nobody cares. And he said he took that and he internalized that, but it's so true, right? Like, so I'm curious for you, like when you first stepped into your first CMO role, right? What were the tasks and like, what were some of the challenges you experienced or you faced in the role?
I think it's the same. There are a couple things, like in terms of my approach to every CMO role I go into. One is, what do you have? So like, what are you working with? Right. And that always for me starts with the team. So there's like people, process, technology. I think data is probably the fourth layer of that evaluation now.
Absolutely.
But I always start with people. So, for where we are as an organization, are these the people that got us to where we are? Or are these the people that can take us to where we're going? And those are hard. Those are hard determinations to make, but I think they're really important. I think you have to be really disciplined about figuring out, what got you here might not be what gets you there. So people's are really, I always dig in on that side of it first. So for me, it's figuring that out. It's understanding how the business makes money, because a marketing program should not be designed without actually understanding how the business makes money. So really understanding what are the levers in the P&L, how do we actually go about, winning new business? How do we delight our customers? Do we not? So do we need to be focused on, retention? Do we need more net new logos? Where do we want to put our bets, or do we need to put it behind all of them? And so to that end, when you go through that process, that should inform your org strategy. And I have a really strong point of view on this. I could line up 10 CMOs right now, and I talk to a lot of CMOs. I have a wonderful community of people that I adore, and we're all really open with each other. And you wouldn't be able to look at two CMO org strategies and see them built the same way. Like literally, we over dinner one night, we're like, let's just share our org strategies. Nobody has because we're all solving different things.
Exactly.
Right? So you really have to be a student of what works and what doesn't, and what have you tried and what haven't you tried. And, I put a lot of investment in my partners around the corporate table. Mm-hmm. So as I think about coming into this job, one of the things that was the most important to me, am I going to be working with colleagues, going to be collegial? Are we going to be able to have tough conversations? Where are people in their career trajectory? What do they want to get from this? What do I want to get from this? And that alignment's really important, because I think the older I get, candidly, Jarrett, mission alignment is everything.
It's everything. It's key.
So if you don't have mission alignment, I don't care what the money is. I don't care what the title is. Walk away. Because if you're not aligned on mission, you're just not going to have much success. You're going to be this person out twisting and not getting stuff done. So those are things that I think about. And so I think if you bring that into your own team, the team needs a mission, right? So I spent a lot of my first 6 months here just talking to people, tell me, trying to really, really engage in active listening. Tell me what's working. Tell me what's not working. Tell me, where the soft spots are in terms of what are we doing really well? What's our strategy here? And then I did a virtual listening tour, and I asked people for their feedback. What do they think is working? What part of our guiding principles resonate with you? And all of that informed building the org vision. So then, we kind of created this a framework called the mindset of a marketing owl. So that's something that, we're trying to embrace as a marketing team. What are the mindsets that we need to be in to really potential that we all know Hootsuite has to be? So it's a specific kind of process that I go through that's been honed over years of sometimes getting it right and sometimes getting it wrong. And I always learn a little bit more each time. But that part of the process is fun. It's stressful. First 6 months of the job is
I could imagine, especially when you're getting feedback from the team, right? Because you're new, and it's who do I rely on? Not saying that you can't rely on the team, but it's I want the honest truth, right? And people are gonna be like, hey, that's Maggie as the CMO. Do I say what I really feel, and do I really say what's really broken, or you don't want to come off as a complainer? What if you know something's broken and don't have the solution? Yeah, right. So that's a big thing.
I have not experienced that people have held back a lot at Hootsuite. I mean, people are super, and this because you work here. The culture here is so different from other places. I think that we work with a lot of really kind, thoughtful people. And at least my experience is that people have been pretty transparent. They've been, I mean, I think people love marketing here. So they want marketing to be successful. So they want to tell me, their thoughts on things. But they do it in such a collegial, thoughtful way that those are fun conversations. Even when they're hard, they're still really fun conversations. And I spend a lot of time trying to make sure that I have time to be in chases and part of sales. And I think, when you're not actually working with sales and you don't see what they're dealing with and the questions they're fielding and the things they're trying to solve for, I'm not sure how you could assert that your marketing programs are effective. Like, are you talking to people?
True.
So that's really important. I've always been on the commercial side. So, I want to get even more of our marketing owls out in the field, out on deals, and they want it too, which is super exciting.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you, Maggie. That's the only reason I'm not on the marketing side. I'll be honest with you. Like, people have come to me all the time, like, JT, why the hell aren't you on the marketing side? Like, why aren't you doing this? And I love marketing, but I love talking to the customer more. But
if that should ever change, there's a whole conversation we could have.
I'm de facto marketing team member. So whatever you need, I'm here.
Melissa will kill me, but it's okay.
But that's like the biggest thing. Like, you hit the nail on the head, Maggie, right? The sales and marketing alignment, right? I can't tell you how many times I've been in different organizations where marketing sits way over there and then sales is in its own bubble, right? Mm-hmm. They have their own stuff. Like, they're pointing at us, hey, we're sending you leads, right? We're like, they're not qualified. We don't know anything about them, right? And it's always that tug of war between sales and marketing. But when you have that alignment, like, we're on the front lines, right? So our input is vastly needed in the organization, right? Like, conversations I'm having with my customers are going to be completely different. We have audience personas built out. We know who our customers are, but you don't know until you really know. And then you're in the weeds with them and you're actually rolling up your sleeves and working with them. So, like, to have that both sides of the fence, I think that's what makes this role that I'm in, like in the AM, makes it perfect for me, right? So I don't have to go out there and, hunt or anything like that. It's like, no, let's connect the dots. Like, what are you doing outside the platform?
Exactly. And I think the more that you really, understand your product and the more that you're talking to these customers, like, it's like anything, you just keep refining and refining and refining. But having that feedback loop between sales and marketing, it's so critical because nobody in marketing wants to be building something that sales doesn't want to use. Nobody wants that.
That's it.
It's just trying to carve that time out to make sure that, marketing is a department that gets pulled on by every other area of the company, right? So, marketing gets involved in so many different areas of the business. So, it's something that we have to stay really intentional about. The number one thing we have to do is help us sell more to more people and make that process easier. That's our number one objective.
That's it. And what do you think about, like, I think you know better than anyone, right? Like, it's no more a selling process. It's more of a buying process now, right? People are getting their information from all different sources. It's your peers, it's your content, it's your blogs, it's groups, forums, it's Discord, all that other stuff, right? So what do you think are some of the things that excite you about that process, being that it's a very fragmented approach now? It's not like back in the day, you download the webinar or the ebook and it's like, hey, I got a lead, right? So, like, what excites you about that, being able to have so many different touch points with the customer?
I think what excites me about it is that you really have to have a multifaceted content strategy. So that's something that's so critical. And I mean, the stats as well as I do, like 70% of the buying journey is already completed before they ever talk to somebody in sales. So that there's this huge lift, right, that has to come from how are you showing up digitally? How are you showing up at conferences? How are you showing up out in social media, for example? And so what's neat about that is you can create these big pillar pieces, but then how do we take these big pillar pieces like trends and some of the state of social media and turn that into a bunch of other places for us to interact with customers? Because there are probably a few that'll read the whole report. There are probably thousands that want to read a tweet and that want to look at one post on LinkedIn. And so that's what I think has gotten really interesting, is really studying content effectiveness, right? Yes. And like having KPIs against content effectiveness, because, I think we do an amazing job, and I believe this, we do an amazing job at volume, right? And so a lot of what we're really focused on is quality and conversion, and how do we really make sure that, is somebody that interacts with this piece of content more inclined to go further faster than somebody with this set of interactions? And so that's the part that's fun, because it's a little nerdy, it's a little data nerdy, but it's also
science.
How do we go do some really cool content stuff as with these insights? And so, there's always more work to do, but that's the part that I think is so So fascinating. I mean, it's no longer just these like white papers and blue papers and
Yes,
boring stuff that, we all say we're reading, but are we really reading them? Probably not,
no. No. Shout out to Jake Dunlap. He said something last year on the podcast. He said, when was the last time, JT, when was the last time you snuggled up by the fireplace with your ebook? I'm like, I'm like, damn it, I've never done this ever. And if we're being honest, if I'm being honest on the sales side, I've never read a piece of article, like an ebook or something like that, and it made me more inclined to buy. It provided more information. Sure. I already know where I want to go with it, right? So that's the journey of it. What really excites me about marketing is the stuff that we can't measure. Mm-hmm. That's what I get excited about, which goes back to that science piece, like dark social and, how are these, things like, for instance, we have 300,000 followers. Out of the 300,000 followers, who is a customer? How did they become a customer? What is their sentiment? And how does that increase or decrease day by day based on the posts that we provide? Yep. So like stuff like that really excites me. And like you said, with the content strategy, it's just repurposing it, right? We have so much.
Yeah, but don't you, I think the other thing it's such a positive, right, is the last 2 years, I think, are holding every company to a standard of humanity. Like, you no longer just get to be in the business of printing money without any sort of accountability for how you show up and do that. And, to where I am and what I do, that's exciting because I want to be involved in purpose-driven brands. Like, I want to be involved in companies that are trying to do more with the platform and the seat at the table that they have. And so that kind of gets back into that branding conversation. And, to your point about like dark funnel, dark social, those things are all really interesting, but you can't take your eye off of the branding piece. And what I've loved seeing is more and more thought leadership coming through around getting that balance between performance marketing and brand marketing right.
Yes.
Because it's the brand marketing that really helps fuel the effectiveness of the performance marketing. And it's really wonderful performance marketing that helps get us deeper into the funnel, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But when you take your eye off brand, which is the hardest thing to sell because it's the most expensive and the most complex, but when you get it right, it unlocks so much value and it drives consideration and preference. And you can't put a dollar amount in some of those things, but it's hard work. And it's not a problem you solve in 60 days or 90 days. Like, it's a problem you solve over thousands, millions of micro interactions with a company that tell you who they are. Like, I don't own the brand. Customers own the brand. Customers own the brand in terms of how they feel about it. What we can do is just try to put our best foot forward in everything that we do. And that's exciting. It's infuriating at times. I'm not going to lie. Really, really. I mean, the last time we spoke about, I've done a couple of brand launches and there's always like a moment of silence right before we like put up the new website. We're like, this is the last moment we own our baby, and it's done. Right. So it's a neat challenge, but it forces us to stay super connected to our customers and our communities. Like, if you're not spending time on that, you're on a slow death march. For sure. It will catch up with you. Well,
but I'm curious to follow up on that, Meg. I think you made some great points. Like, so what does in 2022, what does a good branding like opportunity look like, right? Because like, say for instance, you have the Super Bowls, you have the creme de la cremes in terms of branding, right? But like, me as a marketer, I could imagine being in your shoes and somebody saying, hey, you got $1 million budget, get us in front of as many eyeballs as possible, and not being able to track that and being able to, like, I would be nervous. I would be like frustrated, all the above. Like, so how do you identify a good branding opportunity to say, hey, we're going to get 1 million impressions here and it's going to be worth the dollar amount? Like, how do you quantify that?
So
is there a way to do that?
I don't know if there's a way to do it, but I can tell you like my perspective on it. And I think that there's a couple of things. One, what we really want to do is take back social. What we really want to do is think about how social is a catalyst for good, because I think we hear all the negative stories, but I think that, we're looking out ahead and we see there's also all these wonderful barriers that are broken down in social and everybody's welcome. Right. Yes. And there are some people out there that do some pretty ugly things, but we don't have to celebrate them. We can celebrate people out there that are doing really good things. And so for me, as I think about branding opportunities, I'm always looking for ways to uniquely get at communities that you might not be able to just through digital means. So, for example, we're doing this Main Street bus tour right now. So we've worked with a creator named Maya Gordon, and she and her husband has converted a school bus, and we're sponsoring her getting out to all of these cities in North America over the next 18 to 24 months, really just to teach people about the power of social. Like, you can get a business going on social. You can turn your side hustles into your dreams, into a living. And that part was really, really intriguing. And I'm going to be completely honest with you. She sent me a direct message through LinkedIn. I'm like, there's something here. I didn't have the KPIs figured out in my head. We didn't even really have that partnership figured out. But the more we kept talking, we're like, there's some synergies here and we're going to figure it out. We're just going to keep going until we figure it out. And it's been just a phenomenal partnership. And I don't see anybody thinking about things in quite that way, and actually takes us somewhat back to our roots, right? Like,
exactly.
We believe social's for everybody. Like, we want to be a source of joy, and those opportunities are the one that get my attention. We're working with a dance agency right now just to, think about, there's like the TikTok opportunity and Reels and all these other places where, let's just be, the science says dance releases joy, the endorphins release joy. There's something to it, right? And so, those, and then again, it was somebody that sent me just a really intelligent, thoughtful email that thought there would be mission alignment between what I've tried to do with my career and what they're trying to do with their agency. And now we're working together. And so I talk about this a lot, but I think that when you find partners that are aligned with your mission, a lot of magic comes from that might not be in the SOW. They're bought into what you're doing in a different way that somebody that's just trying to give you a discount on the rate card and win your business is not going to be able to deliver because they're just not passionate about it. So it's a very long-winded answer, but I wanted to give you real examples. But my point is, I really gravitate toward branding opportunities that I feel create some emotional resonance. So if they don't, I'm just not going to do it, even if the numbers look really good, because anybody can make numbers look good. Let's be honest. We both know
exactly.
How to do it, right?
Exactly.
It's about creating feelings, and it's about creating a bond and a way of, striking trust. And we don't get very many opportunities to do that. So I think that's really what drives how we're making a lot of our branding decisions. We're moving a lot more, in the direction of experiential marketing and getting out and talking about the possibility and where we want to go. And so there's no one equation. And listen, I'm not sitting at a B2C brand that I've got $1 billion ad budget. Like, I have to make really thoughtful decisions about where we put our money, right? So there's got to be this really strong balance between, key performance marketing levers, really thinking about our external comms strategy, which ours is very robust, and balancing that with like brand and product marketing and customer marketing and marketing operations and like that and demand gen. And so how do we stitch all those things together? And, I think you got to talk to your team a lot. We're actually, since you are a book person, I will share that I had my last team meeting and I gave everybody a copy of this book, Radical Candor.
Radical Candor,
which is what we're reading right now. And it's about, being candid is actually not, it doesn't give you permission to be an ass. Sorry, Jarrett. I don't know if
No, I love the authenticity. This is what it's about.
But when delivered the right way, it's actually better for both people. Like, if you can find a way to deliver candor with kindness and thoughtfulness, you're going to be unstoppable. And so that's something we're working on. Like, politeness doesn't really have a place in trying to drive profitable growth in a thoughtful way, but kindness does. You can still be kind, right? Yeah, but you got to be willing to have conversations that other teams aren't willing to have. And those are the kinds of teams I want to put together and work with.
For sure. I think you hit the nail on the head again. Like first of all, provoking an emotional reaction is key, right? That's how I drove my strategy. And I'll give you a quick story about how I met Maya, right? Yeah. So I didn't know
you knew her. That's amazing.
Yeah. So me and her, when she was a TikTok star. So when she came over to LinkedIn, I saw 6 million views on TikTok, and she's like, "Hey, I'm bringing my talent over here." And I'm like, "Hey, Maya, space out this and maybe add this hashtag." And I'm like, just trying to help. And we're just helping each other. And like, she was so cool. And we just kept in touch over the years. And when I saw her working with us, I'm like, oh, this is fire. Like, Mayan is the truth. Like, this is just amazing how small of a world it is. But back to your point about creating emotional, resonating emotionally with customers, right? That's how I've built my entire brand, right? And I even hate saying brand because it's just me being me, right? But promoting devotion, like, say for instance, like, say if somebody uses Amplify and they say, hey, we have a new account manager role, right? Versus to something I posted the other day. It was like, hey, 6 months ago, I was depressed. I was feeling down, man. I didn't have my spark. I wasn't there. I was in between jobs. I didn't know what the heck I was doing. I had no unemployment. I was like, I got to get this job within a month and make it happen. And it was just crazy. But once I share that, and share what are happening now in Hootsuite and what opportunities and what doors are opening up. Now it's like, oh man, I like that. I can follow your journey, right? I can go get a beer with this dude, right? Damn, I might even apply to Hootsuite now because they're allowing him to wear the hat and the hoodie and be himself, right? Mm-hmm. So those type of things that really matter. And so when people ask me like, hey, how are you being able to get your brand, which I'll tie back to what you're saying, is just give. Yeah. What makes it work for me is that I don't ask anybody for anything. It's like, you know what I mean? Like, so the way I did my whole outbound strategy, like when I was with iPullRank, was, we got up to 1.9, close to $2 million of no emails, no cold calls. Maggie, was insane. So It was insane. So, and it was just, I didn't have a strategy. It was just, hey, I just knew every other week or something like that, I would get a VP, a CMO, somebody hit me up on LinkedIn DM, say, hey, this is my problem. Can you solve it? I've been following you for 2 years, never liked the post, never reshared anything, but you just been watching. And you follow that journey, and then it makes you want to connect with that person. And I seen my sales cycle go from 4.5, 5 months for a 6-figure deal to 2.5 weeks, Maggie. We get on the phone, we're sitting there talking, we're smiling. You're bringing the team on. You showing me the dog, the family. I'm showing you my family. And then the SOW's out. And it was just lovely.
I think you're talking about brand in the way that I like to think about brand, which brand really at its core is a set of beliefs, right?
Exactly.
Everything else that comes from it is production. It's a way to convey those beliefs in a way that feels consistent. But branding at its core, when done well, it's really just a set of beliefs. It's a set of beliefs, how you want to show up for all of your stakeholders and what you stand for. And I think branding done well is when that comes through, right? It isn't just about having wild colors or, spicy brand voice. It's got to be an expression that feels authentic and true to your core set of beliefs as a company.
Exactly. Oh, my mentor, Ken Gibbs, so he runs Spotify social media. He tells me something all the time that always stuck with me. Social media is just managed perception. Mm-hmm. That's all it is. It's just managed perception, right? So what story do you want to give off and what story do you want to tell? Because we all have them. And this is why I like things like this work, right? And I'm curious for you. I'm going to ask this question about personal branding, Maggie. Yeah. What do you see as the future of personal branding?
Oh, that's interesting. I think that there's a reason that TikTok is catching fire right now. And and I don't have a stat for this, but maybe there's one out there that I should go find if I'm going to say this out loud. But part of the reason that I think that TikTok is attracting people, it's authentic content. It's not, you're not just seeing super polished influencers showing up. And I mean, there's some of that too. I don't want to say that there's not that, but when you go down a hole, on TikTok, which let's be honest, we both have done it, right? Like, my mental health breaks are TikTok breaks. I'm like, I just for 10 minutes and then I come back to this and get through it. I think the future of personal branding is going to be people that make really thoughtful decisions about what they share and what they don't share. Because at the end of the day, for me, personal branding is, I never want to lose the ability to tell my own story. So I talk about the things that matter to me from a social justice perspective. I'll talk about, career pathing and different things like that. I'll talk about my career journey, but I don't share everything. And it's because I want to keep some things for myself and I want to keep some things for my community. And, that evolves, by the way. I have different moments where I'm like, well, I'm going to go share more. And I think that's an important element of social in general. I mean, I was talking to a bunch of Gen Z folks the other day who still said they feel intimidated by social. And I was like, that's completely normal. That's not abnormal. You don't have to be comfortable. I said, but you can just go out and you can observe for a little while and get comfortable observing and decide what platforms make sense for you. I'm not on every platform. I can't manage that for that's just not the way that it works for me. And so I think the future of personal branding isn't going to be showing up and being everything for everybody. I think it's knowing, what lanes you can authentically own and really thinking about owning those in a thoughtful way. Because I think once you open up that aperture and you're like, I'll do anything, I'll promote it's like everything becomes nothing. So do you stand for anything or do you stand for everything? Right? It's like,
so true.
If nothing's important. So why would you believe me? Like, why would you believe me if I was out pitching and posting for everything? Because I wouldn't. So true. That's kind of, I think it's people that actually take the time to think about what do you want to share? What do you not want to share? And being really intentional about those decisions. I think that's the future of personal branding. So
true. And I agree with you 100%. I think personal branding is only going to grow as we continue in the years. I truly believe B2B in the next couple of years. Somebody told me this, another CEO, but he said, every company is going to be like a digital media agency, and we are all our own digital media agency. Right. So it's basically what stories do we want to tell? How do we want to connect with those people? Right. And like for me, I think about this all the time. Like, what happens if I get 100,000, 200,000 followers? What does that look like within a brand? What if the podcast blows up?
Yeah.
What does that look like within a brand? Right. So it's like, these are uncharted territories for me, right? And that's what makes me so excited, because I'm like, I don't know, but I know I love where I'm at. I know I love what I do, but how can that help the brand? And I would love to know over time how this actually impacts the brand, if it does at all. You know what I mean? So that's what I like to think about in terms of personal branding. And for those who are just on the fence, I'll tell you right now, it's changed my life way more than I could ever explain. That's why when people ask me about it, I'm passionate, I'm smiling. I'm like, man, I had no connections. If you talked to me on the phone, you said I was cool. But other than that, when I needed quota, I had nobody to reach out to.
That's right. I had
nobody. And it was just like, hey, can you do this? Can you do me a favor? Nobody would give me a favor. Now, if I'm down, like, it's just cool. Like, for instance, I told you about it when we spoke last week, right?
Mm-hmm.
But Ross Simmons was a good friend of mine at a podcast. He ended up making a big article about the content engine of Hootsuite.
Yep.
And then just to see that as a friend, I'm like, holy moly, now that's my friend. That's my brother. And now let me connect them with Hootsuite, and let's figure out how we could collaborate together. Because I think another part of future of marketing is going to be the collaborative efforts between brands, right? I think I said this last week, like, why can't there be B2B collaboration, sort of like streetwear, where it's like Supreme and Tommy Hilfiger, right? Why can't there be a Hootsuite and Nike? Why can't there be a this and that, right? And what does that look like?
Well, and there will be. I mean, anybody that's working in a B2B company is still a consumer, right? So you're going to continue to see that merging happen. Like, I think there was somebody, I can't remember who coined it this, but prosumers. It's like, so professional consumers. It's like you forget that people that show up like you and me every day and we work at Hootsuite, it's like we don't exist outside of that email domain. It's like, no, I go out in the world, I buy groceries, I go do other stuff, right? And I take in bits of the world. And one of the things that when I was in graduate school, the head of the journalism school sat next to me in one of our sessions, just by chance. And so I got to chat with this person, and it's one of the top journalism schools. And I said, listen, like, what if I don't want to read every article? And I won't shame any publications, but what if I don't want to read every article and X, Y, and Z? But what I really like to do sometimes is like take snippets of different things. And I always read people, and I like trivia, and I love pop culture, and I love film, and and music. I'm a music junkie. And he's like, do all of those things. He's like, don't let anybody tell you that there's one way to be taken seriously as an executive, because all those things inform and spark creativity. And it was like, oh, cool. I am not going to wait to go to Walgreens to get my people. I'm just going to get a subscription now. I'm going legit, so it's neat to like have this conversation with such a cerebral person who I respected. Say, listen, there's all different kinds of ways to get smart about a topic and to think about creativity. And it's informed a lot of how I've carried myself into the next, decade and a half of my career. Like, I'm unapologetic about like who I am, and I'm equally as open about who I'm not. Right. And I think the more that you open yourself to that, the better you become at, personal branding. Like, you can't go out and be somebody on social and not expect to get called out for it at some time, if you're not gonna be somebody that kind of walks the walk, then expect to get some blowback. And we're all flawed. For sure. So we're all gonna make mistakes. Imperfect. If you try to do as much right as you can, you'll get forgiveness for the mistakes you make. And I think that has to be part of the conversation in social. Like we're talking about courageous creativity, and a lot of what sits at the heart of that is, you got to be courageous. And when you're courageous, you spark joy. And when you're sparking joy, you can hit your creative output. And I feel really strongly about that. Love that. I think it makes tons and tons of sense. And we get 2.5 seconds to get somebody's attention on social now, Jarrett. 2.5 seconds. 2.5 seconds. You better be pretty freaking intentional about what you want to convey in that 2.5 seconds. Do you want people to feel good? Do you want them to feel FOMO? Do you want them to feel motivated? Because if you want them to feel bad, done.
So true. So true. Somebody asked me this the other day, and I said this to them. They're like, man, how are you? I think it was the same post I was talking about when I was saying I was depressed. Hey, man, like, how are you so authentic? How are you willing to give yourself up? I was like, it's harder for me to be, it's easier for me to be myself. It was harder for me to be somebody else for 8 years. Yep. I think that was the hardest part for me, because I've lost those ways. And they're like, hey, how did you start that? I failed being somebody I wasn't. And I said, if I'm going to fail again, I have to fail my way.
Yep.
And then luckily from there, it just didn't happen. So I'm through the grace of God, like I tell anybody, just be yourself, man, because there's no better fit. It's like a weight off your shoulders of just being like, look, I can be myself. And I'm being honest. And this, I want to ask you one question before we get off. Like, but I'm starting to see it more, like even the impact I'm having in Hootsuite. Like I look around at the team meetings now, I'm starting to see a few fitted hats. I love it. I'm like, yeah, let's go. That's what I'm talking about. Let's get it going.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, listen, you talk about like being authentic so that you can fall, you know, in your own way. Like you got to pick yourself up in your own way. So if you haven't authentically fallen on your own terms, it's going to be really hard to pick yourself back up and try to be a person that you haven't inhabited. So yeah, we're in violent agreement on that. And I think sometimes you got to work for it. You know, you got to realize that you can't do it everybody else's way. You got to do it your way. And unfortunately, those lessons are hard. I've had them. It sounds like you've had them, but I'm better for it. You're better for it. We're stronger for it.
Absolutely. And speaking of the last question I want to go, which kind of segues nicely to this, right? So what would you say was the biggest failure in your career, and what was the biggest lesson you learned from it?
The biggest failure in my career.
And I hate saying failure because I don't think anything's a failure. It's just lessons learned. So I hate the word failure.
No, we call them learnings in marketing.
That's it, learnings. That's
yes, because we don't want people to be afraid to fail, or they won't try a lot of things.
Exactly.
So I would say the biggest learning that I've had in my career is I was so heads down, working so hard in my 20s and early 30s, and, you know, still now, but that period was really about the hustle, right?
Yeah.
And I spent no time on networking. I invested nothing in relationships. And part of it, I was in a very white cis male hetero environment. So, you know, there's probably a reason that I wasn't reaching out a whole lot, but I really didn't invest in something that gives me a lot of joy now and has opened up a lot of doors. So like I was reticent about social media. And now I find a lot of management skill comes from social. I can put my values out in a way that my team knows who I am. I can connect with them through DM, you know, things like that. But I feel like I missed a big chunk where I could have been those things, those connections that I have, those are what get me through a bad day. Like they're I have this whole cohort of people that I went to graduate school who are some of my first calls when I'm like, how do I solve this? I'm not getting to the right answer. Can you just tell me what to do?
Yeah.
We talk through it. Right. And I think that was a big miss. And I like now when I talk to earlier career professionals that kind of dismiss networking, because it's work. There's a reason that work is in the word networking. Like you got to commit to it. You're going to have to make trave-offs for other areas of your life, but I didn't do it at all. At all. And that was a big miss. And I think I've done pretty well because I've worked hard and put my head down, but I was fortunate that I had sponsors. If I wouldn't have had sponsors, I think I would have missed out on a lot of opportunity because I was so heads down and so focused on the work and so focused on making sure I was producing like a superior project and a product. And I think the other thing that has been a hard one learning, perfection is toxic. Like there's no benefit to perfection, you know, and the older I get, the more that I realize it was never even a very good goal to have. Right. But, you know, we're wired to get A's and above a 4.0. And then you get into the work world and you're like, they're always going to give me more work than I can do well.
Exactly.
So how do I figure that out? And it took a while for me to figure that out. And now I try really hard not to I want to have impact be a goal and have a strong degree of professionalism. And I take what we do and what we produce really seriously, but perfection, not a goal, not a healthy goal.
Can't be that. No, that's so true.
Progress always, perfection, not important.
One day at a time, right? And I'll share one of my biggest learnings, and I definitely think just not being afraid to fail, right? And I'll give you a quick story of why I'm not afraid to fail, right? So when I was about 26, I was working at an agency, right? I was a VP of sales, right? I had just came from Cannes Lions. I was one of their first employees. I ended up leaving there. I'm like, I want to get on the creative side. I rap, I do music. I could help a brand do something, right? And then I'm like, I could do this. Let me get on the stage. I could do this thing. And long story short, I get there, you know, we're about to close a big deal. I end up, you know, having a discrepancy with the CEO, right? I had to just stand on my values. I quit. It was regarding commission. I thought I was going to get a certain amount. Didn't happen, whatever, right? This is my first time ever quitting a job. didn't know I don't get unemployment without it. So didn't think that through. Didn't think that. Didn't
hard
think that
won
through.
lessons.
Hard lessons. So I've got like I've got 3 months maybe worth of savings, right? And I'm like, I'm young, I'm energy, I'm enthusiastic. I can find a job, right? I was a VP. Wrong. Every single company I went to was like, you was only there for 4 months. You was only there for 4 months. Were you really a VP? They can't call the job back because we had a bad discrepancy. I doubt she was going to say something good about me. So I'm like, what do I do, right? So long story short, I'm at this last interview for this job, right? I'm down to my last $200. My mom and dad tells me to come on to Atlantic City trip. I'm on a bus, whatever, the whole family's there. I'm like, I got $200. I just threw it on roulette, threw it on red. I lost. Boop. I literally have nothing in check-ins and nothing in savings. I'm on the casino floor crying my eyes out. And I wasn't homeless or anything, but my mom and dad, I know they would look out for me. But me having a son at that time is like, I just felt worthless, right? Yeah. The crazy part of that story is 10 minutes later, as I'm crying on Resorts Casino in Atlantic City, there's the floor room. I'm crying like, I can't do it. I get a call from a recruiter. Shout out to Aaron Menken. I'll never forget him. He calls me on a Saturday, 10 minutes from when I got there, when I lost my money. He said, Jared, I wasn't supposed to do this for you, but I got a call from the job. They're going to give you the offer on Monday. And I said, 10 minutes from that. So that wasn't the biggest lesson that I ever heard. It was just like, I hit the bottom, right? But then I wasn't afraid to hit the bottom, and I knew what it was. And it was just like, that's how the stars align. So when it comes to me giving it a try or me trying to do something, like, I could have been homeless. I couldn't have been here. I could have been doing a bunch of thousand different things differently that a lot of other people in my neighborhood are doing. And I just wasn't that. And to be persevered through that stuff, to be where I am today, to be speaking with you, Maggie, like, that's what means something to me. And like, that's one of my biggest lessons. So don't be afraid to fail. To anybody that's listening, you know, you're going to hit rock bottom one time, right? But all that matters is how you brush yourself off. How do you get up? How do you keep going? And how do you keep on, you know, shedding your light to everyone? So like that's one thing I definitely want to share with you.
I love that story. Thank you for sharing that with me. That's wonderful. Can I ask you a question before we go?
Sure. Please.
You and I've had wonderful conversations just around like your perspective on how to care for customers and clients. Mm-hmm. Where does that come from? Like, what are those moments that give you pure joy with your customers? Because I think it's really special. I think you should share your perspective on that. It's really unique and wonderful.
Thank you so much. I just love having a great experience, right? So I try to be friends with my clients, right? When you have a synergy between a client and yourself and you're actually friends, you want to do more, right? And you put more pressure on yourself to do better for them, right? And to give you context, like I was a waiter. Mm-hmm. So before I started in sales, I was a waiter. So if I want to make this money, I have to create the best experience possible. So I'm all about creating that experience, right? If I seen somebody drinking water and I seen you was down, I'm already coming there. I see you, taking using your napkin, taking barbecue sauce off your hands. I got wet naps. You don't need to do none of that. I've got you. Here's forks. Here's hot water. Yep. You don't trust the forks. Here's everything. Yeah. And that's what that's about. And I just translate that into sales now, right? So, and you gotta ask the hard questions early, right? Look, I'm trying to earn your business. I haven't earned anything. So when I was going into these AM accounts, it was, I don't know you, you don't know me. These are my strengths and this is where I can help you. And I know my goal is to earn your business by the end of this conversation, by the time renewal comes up. So help me help you. List out everything you do like, list out what you don't like, and we're going to work towards that. And I feel like if we have that partnership together, then it's game over. And thank God I've got some really, really cool clients. Like I love them. They are super cool. They're watching right now. Love y'all. Just got off some calls. So, that's what it's all about. Just creating that one experience, right? Because if you have that experience, how can you go to a competitor? How can you?
Listen, you can't. But I think you just identified the third leg of the stool, right? So don't be afraid to fail. Network with intention and authenticity and wait tables.
That's it.
Not
treat people how you want to be treated.
We'll wait tables at some point. Like you learn more life, and you can't just do it for a month. You need to do it. People can have a good month and see some nice tips and think, well, that's not so hard. Do it for 6 months. Do it for a year.
Do it. Try to get your rent and
college and after. Waiting tables teaches you a lot about life and a lot about customer service.
A lot about life, a lot about everything. Mm-hmm. Yep. I say the best. I would add the best marketers and salespeople are also creatives, like people who work in like the waiter, but also is like the people who do music, the people who are artists, the people who do those things, like that creativity and being able to tap into that and then bring it into a business environment. The best sellers I've ever had always did music or did some sort of music or something like that. So if I'm looking at any recruiters, if I'm asking for a sales and marketing job, I would want to know right off the bat, do you do music? Do you do this? Are you a creative? Let's bring them on in. Like, I love that. So, thank you. Thank you so much, Maggie. Before we end off, I know we went over time, like just
fine. This was great. Thank you.
I just want to say, thank you, Maggie. Like, because I'm gonna be honest with you, when I first came here, I didn't know what to expect. I love the people. Darren told me I just knew the people I wanted to be around. But like when I got the 10,000 followers and I seen your comment about the light, and like I can't tell you how much that makes me feel. Even for Tom, like I've gotten messages from Tom and just like, hey man, Merry Christmas to you and your family, like stuff like that. And I just want to tell you guys to continue to be you, because like it means a lot to me. It makes me want to be here. It makes me want to go to bed. It makes me want to, make this the best podcast ever so we could win. It just makes me want to be involved with you guys. So, I've got so much love for you. I'm so happy I had the opportunity to work with you, and just happy to see where the hell we are next year. I know we're going to be somewhere.
Me too. And I'm so glad you feel that way. We love it here, and we want everybody to love it here. And, thank you. I love what you're doing. And I think what you do is really important, and you do it with so much joy and care. So anytime you need anything, I'm here. And thank you for everything you do. We're very proud of you, and we keep on going. That's all I'll say. Keep on going.
We're doing it. So thank you again, everybody for joining. We're going to be on this clip. This clip is going to be on Spotify shortly later tonight. And then next week, on Monday, we have a special one. We actually have Christina Williams showing up. She's actually CEO of Unpacked, which is a Beyonce-backed brand. So I would love to have that. Can't wait to hear her story, her personal journey. And once again, thank you guys for listening to More Than a Title, episode 3. See you guys next week.